Joel, welcome to the invisible path number 6. How are you?
Patrick, I'm doing great, man. How are you?
Really good. We got a couple of listener questions, so I'm gonna jump in on those, and we each have one this episode, so that's fun for me. I'm not ignored. I'm gonna start off with a question from Mark D, which says, Joel, is it too late to start my Harry Potter Instagram? And what I mean by that is it seems like if you wanted to start something on Instagram now, the algorithm is working against new accounts in a way that prevents a lot of engagement. Is it even worth it?
I guess it depends on what you mean by worth it.
Yeah, that's fair.
So you're right, absolutely. And it seems like everyone gets this now that if you want to get that social media glory, you've got to hop on early. And so that's part of this move to TikTok and all of that. I mean, this is funny. I'm the last person who should be answering any of these questions because I'm really considering like pretty much torpedoing and just getting rid of all my social media because it just doesn't jive with me, but or with my temperament. But it really depends. I mean, if it's something that you like so much that you would just slog through it anyways, then it's worth it, I suppose. And if you have something a unique perspective to share, right? But then if you're trying to get that audience, you may have to be strategic about it, and maybe Instagram is not the place. Maybe you need to find whatever's new, wherever there's a smaller audience, which at first doesn't feel good because there aren't as many people there. But if you start early and you put the work in on risk, not knowing what the outcome is on that platform, not knowing if it's going to be a huge success or if it's just going to disappear, if you're willing to take that risk when the new platform comes up, then you may or may not be rewarded. So there it is. Right? You will be rewarded if it takes off, and you won't if it becomes the next Vine.
Yeah. So I think it's an interesting question. I think you called out uniqueness, and uniqueness is certainly the path of opportunity on established platforms. You have to think about it. If you're going to create a Harry Potter Instagram, there's probably already 10,000 Harry Potter Instagrams. I've done no research on if there is, but my guess is there is. So you would either have to be so good, like your Harry Potter Instagram the content would have to be so impactful and impressive that it stood out above 10,000 or 100,000 or however much competition there is, or you'd have to be like the Hermione's wand Instagram, and all you did was like these amazing, spectacular things, and then you connected with this very niche audience. Uniqueness, I think, is really important. If you're looking, so I posted a picture on my Sacred Plant Co. Instagram. I posted a picture yesterday of a new product, and it was just a bottle, right? It's a bottle with a label on it. And it got so much more engagement than I would have, than some of the stuff I set up and I work really hard on. But it was because it's a very niche product. And that was a real perspective shifter for me this week, is that people are really interested in a picture of a white bottle with a black and white label on it more than something I hiked into the mountains 6 hours to get a little glimpse of. So uniqueness is valuable.
Absolutely. And it does get back to the question that they asked, which is it worth it? And it's like, well, what's your goal, I guess? So if you have some kind of financial goal, then it's probably not worth it, right? If your goal is just to play around and have fun and put your particular spin on everything out there, then maybe it is worth it. I think one of the really randomly in the first Harry Potter book, at the very end, he wakes up, he has his moment, his battle with Voldemort, and he wakes up in the hospital, and he's been asleep for 3 days. Reminds me, it's like she's not screwing around. She doesn't. It's not an accident that it's 3 days. It's like
Yeah.
it's like Christ being in the cave.
Yep.
Resurrection after 3 days. Amazing. Like all the things that she slips in there. So if you're that minded, you could be the person who doesn't just do the the whatever, the meme type stuff. You could be the person who's finding all of these different nuggets,
Yeah.
and these little twists that Easter eggs, I suppose, Easter eggs that she puts in there, and pointing those out to people.
Yeah. And she put a lot in there, so that there's a lot of content available there.
Too much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Second question here comes from Kara, and it says, Patrick, you said billionaires should expect to hear no 100 times before they would ever hear anyone say yes to their idea. If it's $1 billion idea, why would anyone say no? And I think this actually ties really well with the answer to question number one from Joel, which is uniqueness, right? It's like you are not going to come up with $1 billion idea that everybody else understands, appreciates, and already has. Because if somebody understood it, appreciated it, and already had it, it would already be done and they would already have made the money. So if you're going to go to somebody and say, hey, I think we should start an online bookstore, people are going to think that's a weird idea 20 years ago, 20 years ago, probably. But now you're Amazon, and now you can't stop making money no matter what you do. So there,
Yeah.
I think that if you are thinking of ideas that are going to be to that level of success, people are going to have to think it's a crazy idea. People are going to have to think your idea is terrible. And you should expect that everyone will think your $1 billion idea is terrible, which is the reason that you have to go back to last episode and figure out, or a couple episodes ago now, I guess, why you should do things when you have the perfect excuse not to. The perfect excuse is that people are going to tell you no. And if you really believe in it and you really see a path and you really want to be a billionaire, don't. But if you really want to be a billionaire,
Yeah.
then those are the obstacles you will 100% have to overcome, no doubt about it. And that's if you want to start a product that makes you a thousandaire, right? People are going to tell you your idea is terrible no matter what your idea is, because it is yours and you're uniquely bringing it to the world.
Well put. Well put.
I want to know a little bit about what is making you consider walking away from social?
The when I am not on there very much, and so it's very interesting to go on there after not being on there for a long time. And it reminds me of people who report when they travel outside of the United States and then they come back in, and then they see how the people here are living within kind of a certain energetic vibration that's informed by the media and all of that. They live with a certain amount of, I don't know what it is, fear, whatever the narratives are. And so anyways, you hop into social media, whatever particular channel, whatever algorithmic content they're spitting out at you. But to me, it always seems the same. When I look at the posts, like lately, it just seems like needy behavior. When I see posts, it's like, okay, you're trying to get attention. And that's weird. And that's very small-minded of me, because there are a lot of people putting out very good, helpful, useful content. But now I just see it as, this is weird. People are trying to get attention from me. And it's almost like it is the new smoking. I do feel that way. And I'd rather find a way. I think podcasts are so much higher resolution, so much more nuanced. And I'd rather focus there and have the have the social media pages exist with really essentially nothing on them, and just be there as a way where people, if they come across it, then they can go to the website or have a way to contact me. But that's about it.
Yeah.
Use it for making contacts. But I really have no interest anymore in posting anything. And that could just be a cop out on my part. But I think that the real opportunity and real exciting thing to do is just to talk one-on-one with people like you, and do that instead. And it's easy. It's like, it's one thing to say, okay, social media is the new smoking, but then it's another thing to pull the cord and say, well, F it, I'm not going to actually do any of it.
Yeah.
Right. And to position everything that way. And you go to the contact page, like you go to the contact page on Optimus Red, and it's like, we're an antisocial company. That's what it says on there. It's like, don't, here, you can email, you can text, you can email. Don't go to the social media. There's nothing on there. Who cares?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Mm.
I'm interested to see if companies start doing that in a more profound way, because you see what's happening out there with censorship and things like that. And it's like, well, okay, now you guys are censoring people having, like, PhDs having nuanced discussions. So, okay, maybe this is not something you want to support necessarily.
Yeah. Which leads us right into this week's topic, right? Of
Sure.
Analog versus digital. And
that's true, man. Yeah.
Yeah. Magic how that happened.
Yeah. It's early in the morning. My brain isn't working right. It's like, oh, Patrick's so good at this.
I want to dive into this topic, hopefully in a deep way, because I think it's really profound. And the thing that I've been thinking about this, the thing that has been drawing me to this concept is we are already in many ways living in the matrix, right? We are actively choosing, many of us are actively choosing to live in what is essentially a fantasy world of online engagement, because it feels so much more powerful, and it feels so much more plentiful, and it feels like there's so much more opportunity to connect with people in this world that pulls you away from the analog real life. So I want to just ask you, how do you kind of frame your idea? How does the idea crystallize of analog versus digital in your mind?
So I think of it in a lot of different ways. We can think about analog and digital. We can think about do-it-yourself versus outsourcing, and real life connection and community versus social media and all of that. And I think about, I mean, we can take this in a bunch of different directions. Certainly there's the social media aspect to it. There's also there's things that we don't even realize that we've given away service wise. Like, here's a really just far out example from this writer and philosopher, Ivan Illich. So in Mexico, he documented the takeover of of modernity in Mexico. And I'm not sure when this was, maybe in the 50s, 40s, something, but he talks about how the institution of funeral homes came into Mexico. Like, this is far out. We'll get back to social media, but I just want to take it to a completely different place. So before you had funeral homes in Mexico, people would bury their dead. and after you had funeral homes in Mexico, well, people didn't bury their dead anymore. That was an outsourced service. And then what happened when you had that outsourced service? Well, you needed another service. You needed a grievance counselor or a therapist, because you didn't go through the process of actually, like, the grim process that I'm glad I don't have to deal with, of dealing with grandma or grandpa or whoever, this tragic corpses that you have to deal with. You have to bury this damn thing, and you have to cry while you're doing it. And um, and so if you didn't do any of that, oh, and to tie it back to Harry Potter, what did Harry Potter do when Dobby died?
Yeah.
He didn't use magic to
Yeah.
dig Dobby's grave.
Yeah.
He
Really
did it by hand,
yeah.
right? And she and J.K. Rowling, she laid all that out beautifully in that. And and so by having a service that outsources something for you, it's a great thing. What a luxury. But in some ways, you should recognize that it's also taking something away from you, and that you may need another service like a grievance counselor or a therapist as well, because you're not fully kind of processing these things in the way that our ancestors did. Um, and so we just swim. So like part of this whole Invisible Path series is to recognize things that are completely invisible to everyone, like all these services around us, and like all this these digital traps that are in the world that we don't even see anymore, because we just have lived with it for so long.
Yeah. Whew. Man, that one, I mean, great tie back to Harry Potter there. That is such an emotional moment though, right? Because you
Yeah.
develop such an attachment to this little house elf. And like the visualization of this limp, lifeless body being carried, and the like care that went into to physically and manually digging that component, it really is valuable. There's a very similar thing in India. So in India, they build funeral pyres, and they cremate the body, and they do it within hours of death. Like ideally, this is done within hours of death, and they say it's for a couple of reasons. It's the first reason is that they believe that there is some pranic energy that is residual within the body. And that pranic energy is what allows fingernails and hair to continue growing after death. And releasing that energy immediately is beneficial to the family. And what the like wrapping, the final wrapping on this is, as the family lets go of the physical body of the deceased, the grievance process is essentially handled in that way. Like they were there, they watched this body kind of ignite and return back to the atmosphere in the ways that it does, or return back to the world in the way that it does. And as it shifted in the exact same way that you use this Mexico reference, and the timing has become longer, the grieving process has become longer, and it's become harder, and it's become noticeably socially different. And it's just from burial time or from cremation time. And that is a pretty darn interesting thing. It's a pretty darn interesting thing.
It's it's everywhere. You think about music, like what music used to be versus what it is now.
Yeah.
And music used to be, singing, banging with sticks, beating on drums around a campfire. And music was a thing that you did yourself and other people that you knew did, so you could entertain yourselves.
Yeah.
And then it turned into a service. It turned into something that was a commodity that you could buy and sell. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, because my God, thank God there's the Rolling Stones, and thank God there's the Beatles and everybody else, because I'm not that musical. And so it would be sad if all I had was just, me and my family to entertain me with music. It wouldn't go well. But to just recognize that there was like a real fundamental shift that happened a long time ago with that is an interesting thing. And I was thinking the first thing to talk about before I just took it straight to funerals was like the very the very obvious thing of, like, with music, of the difference between a download, or now it's not even a download, it's a stream, right? Versus a long play 33 and a third record.
Yeah.
And how you think about, like, kids, like boomers that were growing up, and coming of age in the 70s, and they got a hold of like the latest Led Zeppelin album, and it had like strange occult symbolism on it, maybe if it was like the fourth album. And it's like it's this physical object. It's like it's like the most modern day equivalent we have, I think, of like a sacred book or something.
Mm.
Like for those kids that were coming of age and like trying to score some like really low grade grass in the 70s or whatever,
Yeah.
and they've got their Led Zeppelin album. I mean, it must have been a little sort of occult experience for those who wanted that and who are really tapping into it. And you think about today, how music today is like the latest music video that's put out by a band, and it's bookended by ads. And it's not even an MP3 anymore on your phone. It's just, well, you pull it up on YouTube and you watch it,
Yeah.
and then it's vapor. It's gone.
Yeah.
And so I think something is lost there for sure. There's something magical, I think, about having that physical representation in your hands, and nothing did it better than records.
That's a really interesting point. It's all, so music is a really interesting lens to look at this through, because you have to imagine that music initially was created around some type of spiritual activity, right? Or at least it's very intertwined in that deep human history. They're very entwined, and you called it out really nicely in that 70s kid, right? There was a spiritual component to holding this magic in your hands. If you go back to like early Beatles, right? Initial Beatles to me are really interesting because of how much well-deserved credit they get for changing the music industry. But if you go listen to like I Want to Hold Your Hand, that is like some twangy, like you listen to that and you think about how that sound is revolutionary at the time. Yeah. And holding that sound in your hand at the time was like mind-blowing. And now I don't know that we're going to get back to a mind-blowing musical album, right? We can get to appreciation of music, but something that you put on and it's just like, I mean, you listen like a live recording of I Want to Hold Your Hand, and girls are like passing out and just screaming at the top of their lungs and holding their head. They cannot believe this is happening in front of them.
Yeah.
And it's just like,
yep.
I want to hold your hand.
I mean, and they, back in the day, they did that in one take. You show up to the studio.
Yeah.
There's no mixing. There's no tracks really, right? I don't know, 4 tracks, something like that. They just record the thing in one take and you're done.
Yeah.
Like one of the, it was like rock and roll was absolutely a spiritual experience.
Yeah.
Back in the day. There's a great video on YouTube if you like David Bowie. It is Moon Age Daydream, and it's this live one. I don't know, from when, 1972 or something maybe. And it's Mick Ronson, guitarist. He's doing this solo at the end of that song, and the girls are just like, everyone is in this ecstatic trance. It looks to me like they're almost speaking in tongues. It's amazing. But so if you want to get a sense of like how synthetic music is today, this is the most incredible thing ever. The only reason I'm aware of this is because I have a 15-year-old and a 13-year-old. There's this Korean boy band. It's like the new version of New Kids on the Block or whatever.
Yep.
They're called BTS, and they have a new song that came out, a new music video, and with that was paired a McDonald's meal. They had to advertise it, and this is bad. So that's awesome. They have like real spicy sauces for the chicken nuggets. Hilarious. So, but what's amazing, this is like a boy band, and I think there's like 7 members. only one of them speaks English.
Mm.
And yet the song is sung in English because
Really?
they know that it's a bigger market,
Yep.
right? And so this is a fascinating thing
Mm.
that they've been established, I suppose, for a while, but this is their second song in English. Only one of them speaks English. So talk
Mm.
about a synthetic
Yeah.
music experience. I mean, it's synthetic for them
Yeah.
practically.
Yeah.
It's a stunning thing, and you can, I mean, pop music today, it's practically like a formula. Like you can listen to it and say, my God, that is like, that does something to my brain so well that you can tell, yeah, that's going to be a hit. And and so it's come down to some kind of science almost. But I mean, with this whole like virtual
Mm.
versus analog thing, I mean, I think what we see a lot
Mm.
is that the virtual, you're trying to fill a hole
Mm.
with something that maybe you're not getting in the analog world. Um, and you can see that like so well in Japan. You have like these girlfriend cafes where lonely men, or anyone, I suppose, can walk into a cafe and pay someone for the service of pretending and acting like they are their girlfriend for like 15 minutes or an hour or whatever. And so this is like a very, very sad situation that we find ourselves in a modern world where we're looking in the phone, in the screen, wherever, to replace something that we've lost essentially because of our modern way of life, and we're trying to fill that hole again.
And I think it's even worse because not only are we trying to replace something with the phone, but the phone is pulling us away from the real thing we're trying to like, right? Instead of the 15 minutes in the internet cafe with your internet cafe girlfriend, you could be out in the street and you might run into your future partner, right? So that
Yeah,
I think is the challenge, the thing that I see that's terrifying about this, and why I think it is matrixy, is that it's very easy to logically make the choice of going into the digital world as opposed to exploring the analog world, because the opportunity within the digital world feels so real, and and it exudes opportunity. It just, the digital world has infinite opportunity, or the illusion of infinite opportunity. And I think a lot of the digital world is very illusionary. And when you start chasing mirages, you end up in a very frustrating place. And there has to be some folklore around chasing mirages. I don't know any of it, but
sure.
go read mirage folklore, because that is what we're doing when we are pursuing the things we want in the real world online.
And it's risk free too. There's no rejection
Mm.
if you do that, right? You can be sure that you're going to get your synthetic dopamine hit, and you won't be rejected because, well, you paid for the service,
Yeah.
right? You paid for the girl to pretend to like you for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And if you go and you see someone in the real world that you don't know, or maybe even if you do know and you have an interaction with them,
Yeah.
it may not go the direction you thought it would go or would like it to go.
Yeah.
And so it's easier to just plug into that service.
It's easier, and
Ah,
the consequences are always less, right? There's a
yeah,
added layer of
that
anonymous.
too.
How about that?
Yeah,
You are just a little bit more anonymous online, even if you like are using your real avatar. There's a picture of you and you're using your real name. There's something that is removed. There's a tangible component that allows you to be a bigger D-bag online, right? It's the
oh
Yelp
yeah,
reviewer does not exist
yeah,
in real life, right? Like there are some people the Yelp reviewer exists in real life. Let me stop right there. There is a
yeah,
small portion of the world that are willing to be a-holes in person. But there's a huge portion of the world that are willing to be a-holes online. And that's another component to this, where you lose the interpersonal connection, and you start to think about people that you meet in the digital world as if they're not really humans.
100%. I think that the freakiest new way that this is coming about, and the reason why I think it's so freaky is because it's getting closer and closer into people's real lives, is the app Nextdoor. And this is where people can be part of some kind of online message board community with people in their local neighborhood,
Yep.
or their local city. And my wife loves it. She reads these posts on there, and some of them are just so hilarious because you have people saying things like the most absurd one was, hey, you know, blue jays are dropping off peanut shells in my yard that they're getting from someone else's bird feeder. I can't believe none of you people are thinking about those of us out there with peanut allergies. And so it was like, holy shit, you're trolling your neighbors with this stuff. It's a stunning thing. It's very sad. I worry about, like, if things go Mad Max in your particular state, they go apocalyptic, and you've never met your neighbors. I hope you're not using your real name on Nextdoor if you are being a complete tool. I mean, because people are using this in a way where sometimes it is very useful and awesome information, but other times, I don't know what it is. People are tired at night. They've had a cocktail, whatever. Like they just decide, well, let me get in this weird trolley vibration and just get going with my thumbs and just start going crazy on my phone and knock out some absurd statements. And then the comment chains on those go. And it's almost like with any kind of solution we come up with, they seem to sometimes have like the opposite of the intended consequence. Yeah. So Nextdoor was probably put together and it seems like a great thing. You want to connect with your neighbors, but it turns into a way for you to like be a complete dick if you want to be, and troll, which is terrible.
Nextdoor was an app that I downloaded for about a month, and I had that exact thing. It was like, oh, this is going to make me hate everyone that I live near. This is a terrible idea for me. I have to get rid of this. And that is it. That is a social media platform that I haven't really thought about in a while, because that has been some years. But it is harder to create a social media app that is more analog, right? Because this is literally the people that live next to you. These are literally the people of your community, of these very specific residential communities. And people are still willing to be like, hey, you guys are ruining my life with these Blue Jays. This is absolutely insane. I can't believe it is. I mean, and all social media platforms have this in a way. Like, I do believe that, I don't know, but when I think about why these things were created, I do believe they were created to connect people. And I think if you essenced out the functionality, it's easy to come up with this concept that we are connecting people. But the divides that are also created are the divides that are able to be created in a digital world seem to be much stronger than the divides that are able to be created in an analog world. It's really hard when you're face to face with somebody to say something horrible, and you feel bad about yourself if you say something horrible face to face to somebody. But there's not you don't get that same negative feedback when you type something and then you're like, the rest of the world is awful, I'm gonna go eat some ice cream.
Oh, and it's so much fun. Like, I was so tempted. Like, I created a Nextdoor account with like a fake name, and I was like, I'm people, and I could never bring myself to do it because it's like, okay, I'm such a genius. I'll have so much fun doing this. But it's like, no, I'm just going to be like stirring up more like poison in the world. But so I couldn't do it. It was like, okay, the juvenile part of me really wanted to, but it's like, okay, I will try to be an adult and I will not do that. But it's a fascinating thing to see how, yeah, that phone screen just allows you to kind of dehumanize all
Yeah.
sorts of people. But I mean
Yeah.
that, that's part of the condition, like, of humans. We cook something up and it has some benefits, but these unintended consequences. Like, I think about, like, the, yeah, synthetic versus real, and digital versus analog. I think about that with like food as well,
Yep.
and how, like, you look at like polyculture food where you have a bunch of different plants growing in close proximity to each other. They're feeding off of each other's, like, root exudates, the
Yep.
different waste products and things like that. You get a more flavorful, uh, healthier, are guided by GPS and satellites and stuff. I mean, that's, and you have to scale up if you want to grow as many people as we've figured out how to grow on this planet. But a lot is lost in that process, and that food that you're eating is, eh, it's like it's like digital friendships and stuff, that are purely just on social media. It's kind of like it lacks enough nutrition to really, uh, give you what you need in your life.
Yeah. Yeah. That so nutrients are a pretty interesting, that's a pretty interesting one, right? I mean, because you can lab create a lot of nutrients. um and as you said, in large scale farming, right, you can add in lab created nutrients, and you can add in significantly more amounts of lab created nutrients into your soil. And if you do something like polyculture, or you do something where you start working with the microbes in the soil, you can add in essentially no nutrients, and you can create food with more nutrients in the end product by not adding in a single thing, by taking care, like physically taking care of what you're doing. So this real versus synthetic thing is, I think we're going to be hit with it in a real way in the food industry. If you start really digging into soil science, we're like 25 to 50 crop years away from having non-viable soil in significant portions of America where we produce the bulk of our food product. That's 25
Yeah.
to 50 seasons of growing. We're going to be alive for that time. And if we don't change something, we're going to have soil we cannot grow in. And that's going to impact every single person, whether you're like, oh no, don't worry, I grow my own food. You don't. because because the cost of everything, right, the impact of food shortage, the cost that ripples out into society is really unimaginable. It will change the way that our society works in ways that are very hard to protect against, or to predict.
Yeah. And the water, everything. We're draining really deep aquifers. It's it's a hard thing. It is hard to be an optimist when you pay attention to all the problems out there we've made by scaling everything up in the way that we have. And it's almost like the imagination is the ultimate kind of virtual
Yeah.
tool. And what we've done is there's like this pureness to thoughts and the imagination. And so you can think in this very pure synthetic way and say, okay, here's how I'm going to grow ungodly amounts of corn.
Yeah.
And you can do that. But then when you apply that imagination, that human imagination, to the real world, then you end up stripping all these nutrients away, and having all these unintended consequences, and cratering everyone's hormone levels, because you have all of these, synthetic chemicals you're spraying on everything. And so there are so many catastrophes out there in the future that you can see, and it's like a slow motion train wreck, because we've moved away from the wild inputs, and we're trying to get those back in the form of supplements and things like that, right? You're trying to take care of your body now. You don't have, you're not getting the nutrients you need necessarily from food. I mean, it's fascinating to think that only in the past few generations we're at this point where you don't really eat hardly any wild food unless you intend to.
Yep.
Like that's a new thing completely, to not eat anything that is just wild and wasn't modified over. I mean, even bananas, right? Fine, you could say, oh, it's a wild food. No, I mean, bananas used to just suck, and then we just worked on like apples,
almost
tomatoes,
everything, right? All right, I lost you there. But so
yeah,
you were in the middle of why apples and bananas
yeah.
and cultivated food, essentially, where they came from, because I think it's fascinating.
It's a miracle. We made these over time. We bred them to be awesome, and thank God we did. What a gift from our collective past that we did that. But as you scale these things up and try to feed billions and billions of people, um, you're losing something there, and you're losing those wild elements. And we're trying to recapture some of this in the digital world. I mean, like I think about our ancestors and the community that people used to have, the connections they used to have. You look at like one of the most fascinating examples of this, I think, for like the filling up of the cup. Everyone has a cup, and it's kind of empty, and you're trying to fill this damn thing up. Is so primate grooming. We like primate. You look at monkeys. They pick lice off of each other, whatever. They groom each other, and there's this contact, and there's less of that. Like people today do not have as much human contact as they used to, for sure.
Without a doubt.
And so one of the craziest uh, synthetic replacements for this is these videos on YouTube called ASMR, and it stands for something like auto sensory meridian response, something like that. Basically, it's these videos where someone is like whispering in your ear. And if you think back, I don't know if did you ever have lice checks when you were a kid in elementary school? You didn't do that. So I remember this. We had lice checks. They would come through every once in a while. You'd have like a volunteer mom, this volunteer group of moms that come through, and they would check all the kids in like second and third grade. They'd look through their hair for lice. And they'd go through there, and it was like, okay, this is the first time I think someone has ever like picked through my hair exactly like primates used to do. And what the effect that has is your whole body, especially your scalp, everything lights up with just these tingles. And this is something that you don't even know that you were ever missing. And no one gets that at all. And so people are trying to replace this in the digital world. This is a stunning thing. It's interesting to think about the things that you didn't even know that are missing. It's like, to take it to the absurd, right? Icing your balls, getting light on your balls, being outside, right? All these things. It's like doing things that that your caveman ancestors had access to and got all the time and took for granted, and that we've moved away from. And things are a lot easier now. If we were living, I'm wearing glasses. If we were living back in the day, I'd be dead. I'd be dead a long time ago. So, um, so can't complain much, but it's fascinating to pay attention to what we've lost and what you can try to replace in a real or maybe even a synthetic way as a way to try to recapture some of this.
So on this realness component, one
Yeah.
of the areas we haven't touched is outsourcing versus doing. And I guess we touched on it a little bit. We started in this way, right? We started with the burial component, which is, but in a way that is more practical to daily life, right? Like burials or funerals or death are practical to life for sure, but not for many of us, for most of us, not a daily occurrence. But on the daily occurrence side, there are lots of things that we do choose to kind of to outsource because we don't find them as valuable as they might be. And the thing that's kind of clicking in my head is cleaning services, right? So cleaning services are an interesting one because the time spent on cleaning can feel really wasteful in a lot of ways. But the energetic benefit of living in a calm, clean, organized living space is really valuable. And the care, like if you go into a monastery, right? That is a huge component of what the daily life is just taking care of the physical space. And if you outsource all of that work to somebody else, I imagine there is likely a pretty significant cost that is subconscious. There's a subconscious cost to living in a space that has been put together by someone else.
Man, yeah, I wish someone would. I need to get a cleaner. That'd be great. But then I can complain about what I've lost after my whole place is clean and I didn't do it. That would be the ultimate. I would like to get there. Yeah, there's so many like Zen koans, right, about washing your bowl, right? What does the master say to you? What's his retort? What's his reply? It's to wash your bowl.
Yeah.
And that is the path, right? Some kind of presence with doing what needs to be done. And I think I had this quote from the last episode from Ram Dass, which is that even God has to take out the trash. And
yeah,
and so being present with that day-to-day stuff you have to do.
Yeah.
Oh God, Patrick, are you telling me I need to like search for some kind of insight while I'm cleaning the litter box? I mean, man,
I think
this is hard. It's gonna be hard.
I think there is. I really think there is insight in it. And that it is, it's taking. It goes back to a lot of what we talked about last week. Interestingly enough, right? There's taking an initiative to do something. There's taking responsibility to kind of make and create the life, the living space that you want. I did this thing this week where I took everything out of the room that I sleep in, and I'm a weird person, so I don't sleep in a bed. So all I have is a rug, a pillow, and a very, very, very thin blanket, and that's it. That the entire room is empty aside from a rug, a pillow, and a blanket. And the like energetic shift in that space was marketable and palpable, and it was a really, really interesting exercise. So I do think, we're lucky in a way, right? We live rurally. No one's going to come pick up after us. There is a 0% chance we are going to get people to drive out in the middle of nowhere and take care of the messes we've created. We have to. But when you live in suburbia, it's really easy. And I've done it, right? I've lived in suburbia, and it's been like, yeah, I'm going to be out, and someone can come in and pick up this mess that I've created and dust these shelves off. And when you come in, it smells fresh, but it's completely different than this energetic cleaning that I did of my sleeping quarters, which is just, it's like a home now. It was a really interesting experience for me. And I do think there is a lot of value both on the front and back side, right? Okay, yeah, sure, it feels good, all that, but you also appreciate and take care of things when you are the one that's going to have to fix the mess you've created for yourself. So I think that the doing component makes you more conscious of the work that will be involved in all of the things that you do. So hands-on makes you a more conscious being. I just think that is inherently true about us. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, that's beautiful. And as you're telling me about this like amazing minimalist room you have, I'm just thinking about just the clothes all over the floor and like the chaos of my bedroom. And then the kids, just the refuse the kids leave everywhere.
Yeah.
Do I pick this up or do I browbeat them to make them pick it up? This is an amazing contrast that we have between our lives. So, oh no, I derailed myself. I forgot what I was going to say about it. Where was I going to take this? Doing things yourself.
Well, let me ask you this.
Shoot, I forgot it.
You can let this run in
so
the background and maybe it'll come back.
Yeah.
What is the decision you make with your kids? The kids bust out 75 different things. How do you approach that when they've taken over the family room and they've made it into their own play world?
If they're working on something, I let the mess happen.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes, even if they're not, I let it happen because you have to learn things. You have to learn to destroy things and make a mess and break things.
Yeah.
And then figure that out and try to then, bring that chaos that you created back into some kind of order. That's, and some people get very uptight about that kind of stuff, but I just feel like, well, if they're learning something. Like my kids they like to make things, they're pretty creative. And so let them trash the place, let them burn through supplies, let them figure it out a little bit. I don't really care. I'm fine with the chaos because it's a creative household. We're all creative people, but but it means that there's just like chaos everywhere. Like because if you have a project, sometimes it's like you have a bunch of materials you brought together. There's things that are scattered everywhere and you just let it happen.
Yeah.
And that's a fine thing. I'm okay with that level of chaos, I guess. I mean, yeah, my bed tracks my heart rate variability, which I had no idea a bed could do. Some of these ridiculous sleep number beds. So the difference between what you're doing and what I'm doing, this is amazing. And I love it. I hope one day to get to this point of like simplicity that you have. That's awesome. Yeah, trying to it's like there's like space. You have a lot of space, mental space, when you are out of that digital world and when you are just taking care of what needs to be taken care of in the real world. And that creates space for like, deep thought as well. And I think about how the attention span of people is just dead today.
Yeah.
myself included. The phone has killed all that. And back in the day, um, when you had the church and most people were illiterate, they would
Yeah.
walk into the church, and the only thing that they could get information from was the stained glass windows in the church. They would depict some kind of scene from the Bible. They could understand that. And the priests, they had they could read, right? They could read the Latin Bible, and they were the only ones. And I think that like the comparison today now is that the stained glass windows is the digital world. It's every single book that's been put onto Audible.
Yeah.
And the most occult thing, the priest class now, is anyone who can sit down and read a book.
Mm.
Seriously, because the attention span and people's lives are so busy now. Um, and the real occult information out there that's hidden is something that hasn't been digitized yet.
Yeah.
Like there are books out there, there are rare books that no one cares about or hardly anyone cares about. And those things haven't been digitized yet.
Yeah.
So if you can't find it online, you have to go searching for it in the real world.
Yeah.
It's hard for people. And then you'd have to, my God, you might even have to read the darn book instead of just listening to it on Audible while you clean the dishes. So, so this is a fascinating twist. And if you're only consuming stuff that the algorithm serves up to you, that's palatable to the algorithm and that has that number of views, then you're not going to the hidden corners of like the human experience and of human knowledge to rescue some kind of gold out of there.
Yeah. That, so this is something, this specifically, this physically reading books is something that I've been trying to cultivate within myself. When I was like 12 years old, I went on a trip overseas with some of my friends, and we got in so much trouble that I almost got kicked out of Switzerland. And when I came home, my parents were not remarkably thrilled with me. So they came up with this solution that they were going to ground me for the entire summer and I was going to be forced to read books, which was like my favorite thing ever. So do not tell them. I went outside every day. I laid in the sun and I read books. And that is the only summer that I really remember from my childhood because I loved it so much. And I would just every day I'd go out and I'd read for hours, just laying in the sun. And now I live in the middle of nowhere. And it's that same quiet, right? Like where I grew up is very quiet. We were rural, so I didn't have any distraction. I didn't have a phone at 12. And now I go out and I've created this beautiful space in the middle of the property it's secluded, it's isolated. There's these benches I can lay on. It's the same setup essentially as what I had when I was grounded as a 12-year-old and in loving life. But I get out there, I start reading, and it's like I read a page, and then I'm like feel that pull to my phone, like, well, maybe I should check if somebody texts me, and then someone inevitably did, and I'm like sucked into this digital world. And when you do something on Audible, right, you can retain a lot of information, but you can also multitask. And we've talked about the benefit of multitasking, and there is benefits of multitasking, but there's also a detriment too, right? It inherently, if you split your attention, you are losing some of that attention on either side. So I have been really working, and it's not easy. It's not easy to be like, yo, you are going to spend 3 hours reading this book and you are going to hide your phone. I need somebody to just be able to like knock me out, hide my phone, and then I'll go to the middle of the property. I'll read for a while, and then I'll come back, and everything will still be on my phone. I will have missed nothing. It's still there.
There's the acronym that the kids use these days, IRL, in real life.
Yeah.
And the fact that acronym exists just demonstrates the supremacy of the virtual world, especially for the younger generations right now, that you make this distinction and you use an acronym to do it, that you could text, you could, just send in a text. It really does demonstrate, I think, that the virtual world is more real to people these days. And yeah, I mean, I'm reading a book right now that is out of print. There's no digital copy, there's no audible version, and hopefully it'll be for a future episode. And yeah, to carve out time to do that, and to say, well, okay, yeah, I'll do that instead of YouTube or whatever, or work on something else. I mean, it is a real dedication to do that. And so that's why I see this as like this is the new occult thing. This is the new priest class. Like anyone who could, this is the new deep work, and hardly anyone can do it anymore. And it's a sad state for sure. I mean, yeah, like what our human imagination has done. There's science fiction novels about this. Like Isaac Asimov, he covered some stuff about how like humans would get so advanced that they get to a point where they couldn't even do simple things anymore, because everything was done for them by the computers and by the machines. But
that's happening for sure, though. That is absolutely happening.
Yeah. Yep. I remembered yes. What I had lost before.
I knew it.
You were talking before about I think it was about like repairing something or taking care of your space, right? Yeah. Taking care of the things, and how no one's going to come to your rescue if you have a mess that you've made. And in Aldous Huxley's book, Brave New World, which everyone should read. Mm-hmm. Everyone should read 1984 and Brave New World, given today.
Given the life.
But in Brave New World, they have a saying there, which is that they have a few good ones, but one of them is that it's better to end than mend. And what they mean is it's better to throw something away than it is to repair it. And of course that fuels the consumer society. We have that everywhere. You have a product, one microchip goes out on it and you throw it away.
Yep.
And we had a lot of smoke here in Flagstaff earlier in the week because of forest fires. And this killed, we have like a little window air conditioner. All the ash in the air ended up clogging up, along with all the lint and whatever, in the drain, the little water drain for the AC unit. The ash got in there too and made this amazing composite material that just completely clogged up the AC. And so my wife's freaking out. She's like, well, it's hot. We need AC. Just go buy another one tomorrow. So that's not happening. I took that darn thing apart and cleaned everything out. And I was just thinking about that book and how it's better to end than mend.
Yeah.
And now the thing runs quiet and it's happy again. And it would have been just a real tragedy in a way to throw out all of this like copper and refrigerant and plastic and an engine and like a motor, little electric motor in there that spins the fans and the electronics and the steel case. And why would she said, well, it's so old. It's about time. It lasted a long time. It had a good run. It's time to get a new one. And it's true. It's old. But how do I know that the newer one is going to be of better quality? It might be of worse quality. There are people today that are like buying really old cars, cars that don't have any electronics in them. And this is like the new luxury almost, to get like an old vintage Jeep or something. It has no chips in it anywhere.
Yep.
It has something that if it breaks down, you can get parts for it and you could repair it yourself or find someone else who could repair the thing very easily.
Yep.
And you don't need diagnostic equipment, to fix this. And so people are recognizing now the importance of being able to fix things themselves and the importance of having like simple tools and simple systems that you can rely on, because everything has gotten so complex these days, and the complexity creates a degree of fragility.
Yeah. It's funny you say that. I have this very unique FJ Crawler, which is like this interesting edition of an FJ Cruiser. And I was going to get rid of it because I have a fancy little electric car now that's like a simple. And the FJ Crawler is the only car that I mean, it's increased in value since I bought it.
Yeah.
And it is like it is a go anywhere machine, and it is simple, it's stupid, it's heavy, but it was a like I've never really been attached to man, it was I could not get rid of it. Like I barely
Yeah.
I barely use it, but man, it like I know it's my apocalyptic game plan,
Yeah.
right? It's like get in that thing and you have
Totally.
280 miles. So just
Yeah.
start going somewhere we're 280 miles away. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, old and same thing, you know, you talked a little bit about mass scale farmers and they're in a real bind right now because they're not able to fix their own tractors. So the big tractor companies are putting in so much technology, and they are putting in technology that prevents farmers from being able to repair issues in their tractors. So anytime something goes wrong, they have to pay more money to the company that they bought this thing from. And that is certainly a planned component of this. I mean, this is happening in essentially everything we do, right? I mean, MacBooks,
Yeah.
there are very strong built-in components that prevent you from being able to repair these things. And most of the time, it's something stupid, right? It's like, oh, here's how we fix this. We just pour glue all over the electrical components so that everything you cannot make a solder repair. You have to rip everything out and throw it away. That is your only option. Buy a new one from us, period. So we are living some strange fiction. There is some fantasy fiction that has become our reality in ways that are pretty scary right now. And those two books, A Brave New World and 1984, are a little too on the nose.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. So yeah, so these companies, I mean, to build, it's almost like a necessary evil, like this planned obsolescence that they have, where you have to constantly, like, I'm afraid to upgrade to the new iOS on the phone, because how do I know that they're not going to put something in there that's going to kill the battery life on the
Yep.
phone, right? They need to do that so they can sell more of these things. If they were too durable, then they couldn't make enough money.
Yep.
Because they do need the money for R&D and all of the technology that they're working on developing. So I get it, but it's a darn shame. And eventually, I think as a species, we're going to have to grow up and be like, look, we can't just keep throwing crap out. Like, we're going to run out of raw materials.
For sure.
And you look at those farmers with the tractors with all the computer chips. I mean, I heard something just yesterday about how, I don't know if this is true or not. I tend to suspect it is, or close to true, that 80% of the chips that are made today are made by one company in one country, in Taiwan. 80% of them. And how, like, Intel now, they are even going to this company and saying, could you make our next gen chips? Because we've lost the technology. We don't have the technology to make them. We're going to make a factory maybe in the US, spend like $10 billion to do it, but it'll take us, 5 years to make the factory. And by then the technology might be outdated. Like,
Sure.
It's moving so fast. It's getting so highly specialized that all the technology has to be consolidated in one place so they can keep growing it incrementally on that cutting edge of development. But that just makes things so fragile. So freaking hold on to that crawler, man. That sounds like an incredible vehicle. You just need a few extra gas tanks.
It's true. It's true.
Then I would suggest whiskey. Get a bunch of whiskey in there too. That's a good trading thing. Whiskey and ammo for the apocalypse for trading. You're gonna need some barter supplies, man. And I think whiskey and ammo is solid as hell. Maybe some
True.
like those MRE rations or whatever.
True. You're
Yeah.
not gonna lose value on those. All right. So as we
No.
wrap things up today, any last, I got two things for you. Any last thoughts to
Yeah.
crystallize this concept, and any recommendations for out of print books?
Yeah, I don't think I have recommendations for out of print books because my interests are so niche that most people aren't gonna be interested.
All right.
So
Fair enough.
like I could say like the book I'm reading now is called Toadstool Millionaires, and it is about the patent medicine industry in like the 1700s and in the 1800s, and this is like the kind of the quack medicine and the different preparations that were made by doctors and snake oil salesmen back in the day, and the mixture between medicine and entertainment essentially, because these became road shows, and so it's like circus, like the freak show tent, the circus, and the miracle cure. It's all coming together, and so like reading this and seeing the overlay of that and the biohacking world and like Instagram and all that, and seeing some of like the curious kind of congruences there is fascinating. And so if I can actually whip myself into having the attention span to read this thing, and then bringing some different connections together, I think this would be a fascinating thing to talk about in the future. So that's what I'm reading. It's not a recommendation though, but it is out of print and you'll never find it digitally. So like closing thoughts. Like there's that saying that man cannot live by bread alone. I think today it's that people can't live by memes alone, and that the digital world flattens reality to a degree that isn't good for you. And so like finding ways to be aware of this, finding ways to reclaim the analog for yourself in your life is pretty important. And you're recording outside today. You can hear all the crickets and the birds in the background, and being outside a little more, finding small ways to reclaim the analog and to reclaim doing things yourself that are normally services is pretty good.
Yeah, all of that for sure. Without a doubt. I think my final thought would be to really look into the poll to see, when you're faced with the choice, it's really easy to say, oh, I'm going to make the choice to go do this digital thing because it feels like there is so much opportunity. But also, as you're pushing into or being pulled into that opportunity of a digital world, can you consciously be aware of the opportunity cost that's happening in the real world, in the analog world, and just balance out and weigh out those two opportunities versus lost opportunities, and see what arises in you. Because I think that is a thing that the more I think about, the more I'm intrigued by.
You said before, as like a good technique to use, you said before, well, I'm going to be outside, I'm going to read this book, but then the phone is there and it's a pull and it's always the same crap and it'll be waiting for you. Like, just, you can think about it that way. Like the phone, I can always pick it up later. It will be there. I can do that later. It's still there.
Yeah.
And if you tried to live in, I don't even know if I could do it. Yeah. Trying to live in the analog world, and giving that as much attention as you give to the digital world. Like, don't worry, don't be afraid that you'll quit it and you'll lose the digital world forever. That garbage will still be waiting for you. Good luck trying to quit it. It'll suck you back in, but the longer you stay away, then you have like this strange feeling when you come back to it, where you're like, wow, this is not what I thought it was. This is just kind of strange. And maybe it is the Matrix. Maybe that's maybe that's your inner Neo and your
Yeah.
spidey senses. So telling you should be suspicious of it.
Yeah. Joel? Oh, and Tales from the San Francisco Cacophony Society. If you're looking for an out of print book, that's a good time. Tales from the San Francisco Cacophony Society is a wonderful read. Joel, thank you so much for connecting today, for sharing a little bit of our brains through this digital world. And hopefully it inspires some people to get out there and explore the real world.
Yeah, I can't wait to see where we're going to take this next. We haven't even decided what the next episode will be. If you have more questions, look in the show notes. I'm sure my email's there, your email's there, something, websites, whatever. It's all there. Find us, reach out.
Oh yeah, reach out.
We'll do something awesome.
Let me do the first time ever. If you like the show, I've never done this, but everyone does it and it is valuable and important. And I'm apologizing prehand. If you like the show, review us on iTunes. That's super helpful. And tell somebody about us, because why not? Like share some cool ideas with people. Thank you guys. Love you. Talk to you soon. Thanks, Joel.
See you, Patrick.
All right, man.
Dude, that was a trip, huh? That went all over. It's great.
Yeah. Every one of these, I feel like we talk for an hour and a half almost on this one, and we like barely scratch the surface of the conversation.
Yeah. And yet we're just going, we're covering so many different weird things. It's awesome, you know?
And
that's the best part.
Yeah, we cover everything. It's an amazing, it is an amazing feeling at the end of these things.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
man, this is good, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I don't know what I did with my video there. Can you still see me?
Yeah, I can see you.
Okay, good. Well, cool. I appreciate it. Thanks again for a little tweak on the timing, and let's talk soon.
Yeah, let's do it, man.
Cool.
All right, see you.
Enjoy your day. Thanks, man.
Se torna